Welcome home to Passionate Justice 84 on Our Salon Radio. Thank you for all your continuing and growing support. This transition, to Our Salon Radio has been and will continue to be, with your help, seamless, and so much fun. And soon, we hope, you'll have so many listening possibilities at Our Salon Radio. So stay alert and reach out to me on Twitter at jwolf41387, on Twitter at jwolf41387, for all Passionate Justice news, releases, podcasts. I ask all of you, follow the show at JWOLF41387, and now a new hour. Personal notes, really wonderful guest writers spurring you on every day, every week, a new challenge to create a little more justice in our world. And join Our Salon, where you hear Passionate Justice. It's the very best readers and writers site on the net, growing, created and hosted by California's Lori Wright, and it's free. Join Our Salon now at www.oursalon.ning.com, www.oursalon.ning.com. I am author, activist Jonathan Wolfman, and the spark, as you know, for these stories, Passionate Justice, a progressive memoir in essays. It's available at Amazon, and I am so proud to say, underwriting for Passionate Justice in 2015 comes from Bud Clayman and OC87 Productions, producers of OC87, RecoveryDiaries.com, and the feature-length film OC87, the obsessive-compulsive major depression bipolar Asperger's movie. Check out OC87, RecoveryDiaries.com. Are you ready for some poetry? Leading today, Marina Matte, a new friend from that fabulous group of writers in New York State's Hudson Valley. Marina Matte grew up in New York City, where she's been featured throughout the tri-state area and was the producer, co-host of a poetry series in New York's West Village. Now living in Orange County, New York, Marina's been featured at major venues throughout the Hudson Valley, such as the Woodstock Poetry Society and Calling All Poets series in Beacon, New York, where she's also on the board of directors. Her work can be seen on various websites and publications, anthologies, and her chapbook is called Cave Speak. First, her poem, Blot. I saw his mouth curl up like the edges of a document in flames, and his smirk crackled. Smoke continued to rise, at first from his ashen flesh, then from behind closed doors, the promise of transparency, a smoke screen to distract from the precipice, from the burning seas below, blotting out the solar plexus sun. But slowly, over this flame, in this broth of blood and secrecy, dark frogs thrive and sing. New moon by new moon they gather, shadow songs of metamorphic rage, ravens on their mission, stewards of humanity's memory, color of dragon, their primal power on my shoulder. They perch on every tree, every cable, every post. The young test their wings, and they withstand everything, their voices clear. One by one they lift off, pour into the sky, a shimmering scream. Now from Marina, Horn of Delirium number 20. My mind has abandoned its origins. I synchronize to a digital identity. Math has changed its manners. I don't count anymore. Something else counts milliseconds and whistled documents. I count on austerity, calls to senators who count on the Kochs. Messages from the earth are also numbered. Got democracy? Even the government's got catchphrases. What are they marketing? What's behind door number 200,000? Are there features in snowfall? My bucket list is full of electromagnetic fields and secret court. I got nothing to pack and no place to go. 1% crowds out choice, even as it manufactures it. I grind my teeth at night, dream I'm lost, can't find my way in the cloud that erases place. I'm no Scarlett O'Hara in a fog of romance, clothed in slavery's sumptuous drapes. They've got cement bunkers for the consumptuous. I've gone from consumer to consumed, fattened, with the perfect strategy, 100,000 signatures to deport a celebrity. Don't mind the toxic drinking water. Give me a car that drives for me and I won't notice my will missing. If I get bored with that, install a 3D TV. I won't notice the planet dying. Now, from Marina Maty, teachings. My mother taught me to walk in heels. She didn't teach me to kick. My mother taught me to smile. She didn't teach me to question. My mother taught me to be alone. She didn't teach me solitude. My mother taught me vanity. She didn't like me. My father encouraged my independence. He didn't like rebellion. My father encouraged my talents. He discouraged my direction. My father made me listen. His voice buried mine. My father made me eat. He did not feed me. My brother brought the world home. I wasn't allowed in his room. My brother wrote for the college paper. I wrote for myself. My brother went to Paris. I defended against men on the subway. My brother argued with my father. I watched. My parents held to monogamy. I learned to suffocate need. My parents held to thrift. I learned to turn off want. My sister took care of my mother. My mother took care of my father. My father taught Gabriella to sing. Gabriella bought me a dress. I took care not to cause trouble. Trouble took me in. Trouble took me in so quietly I thought it listened. Trouble took me in so softly I thought it was love. Trouble took me in with such a thrill I thought I was free. Trouble took me in so deftly I thought I had no choice. Trouble has a gnarled face, unmasked now. It unravels as it grows. I continue to follow. Fallow are my days. Dazed in hiding, I await the infant to kick. And here's Marina's poem, Mother Christ. Earth is Christ, we are the thorns that make her bleed. Indebted to the seventh day, our resources, heart, muscle, bone, have been plundered by purity. Earth is Christ, the Antichrist is us. On the asphalt labyrinth, hell is our brow of adrenaline in search of a remedy to exhaustion. Earth is Christ, and Mary Magdalene is crying. The gravest of life forces has been unearthed. The last forbidden fruit, our earth has been crucified, exiled from planet Eden. God's daughter will rise without us. And this from Marina: let's dance in the shadows, to Tony Pena. Let's dance in the shadows. It's the only place to dance, the only reason to dance. It's breaking out of the mold they set me in. I've been up to the roof to throw over, crack open that sarcophagus. Shadows mean I walk the avenues after midnight in the armless reach of display windows. My personal shadow carried inside of me, a box lined in velvet, locked without a key. I can imagine its contents, and that is enough. A chorus of shadows are my companions, with secrets and a promise. Those secrets are mine, mine alone, and because of them I dance. I dance at parties, throw myself against the wall. I dance by myself, Mata Hari on the keys of my royal, spying on darkness. The shadows laugh then, and that joy keeps me going. Otherwise I might wander bed to bed, leave strands of spit on strange pillows. My shadow battles a larger one, a David and Goliath of thin air. Nobody wins, nobody loses. The stuff of nightmares, the challenge is to dance in that larger shadow, find its wild moon that teases shadows out of themselves, makes them a part of night. Then I am shadow, and something dances in me. Now, I must say, what a gem. What a gem. What a find for us is Marina Matte of Orange County, New York. And we thank, too, Greg Correll for putting out the word. It's so far brought us his word. Some really great writers. Now, want really out of box? Here's Jeremiah Horrigan, also from the Hudson Valley. I met Jeremiah 5 summers back. 5 summers back at a Greg Correll organized, energizing writers' workshop, a whole weekend at the Mohonk Conference Center at New Paltz, New York. Jeremiah calls this piece Premature Burial, a future remembrance of newspapers past. I've been asked to contribute something to a time capsule being prepared for burial at the public library in my town. It will be opened in 100 years. Here is my message to the people of the future. Greetings, people of the future. This is a person of the past speaking to you. How are you? I'm fine, though dead. I'm writing this note to you on something known as paper. It's an ancient medium I suspect no longer exists. It's made of trees that are chopped down, squeezed dry, and squashed into thin sheets. I'm hoping I don't have to explain what trees are. There's some worry about that back where I come from. I'm also hopeful that the English language is still the language of choice in the future, that Esperanto has not finally somehow caught on and become the thing. That would be a shame, since what I'm writing to you would look like so much gibberish. Well, just in case, Kiel vi fartas. I am what was once called a newspaper man, which is a job that even now in the far distant past appears to be going the way of paper. Jobs in general also seem to be going the way of paper. Only time will tell, I suppose. Here in the past, when newspaper men and women sit around worrying about their jobs, we sometimes talk about other things that have disappeared. 16-ounce bottles of beer, 5-cent candy bars. Hell, some of us even remember 5-cent beer. But we always go back to newspapers. How we're going to miss them? I know I'm beginning to sound like a stuck record here, but you don't know what a record is, do you? As everyone in the past knows, newspapers used to be good for lots of things. Rolled up, they made excellent fly swatters, and there was never a better material with which to watch your windows. No streaks. And the thing was, you'd have to kill a lot of flies or wash a lot of windows to even run out of newspapers. They got printed and delivered to your door every day. And when all the flies were dead and the windows clean, you could always read them, these newspapers. That was the best part. Newspapers were full of interesting and important stuff, like the whereabouts of the time capsule this little note's buried in. I sure hope you future folk or your parents had the foresight to save the newspaper story I wrote about where this time capsule was buried 100 years ago. Otherwise, I could be wasting a lot of time writing this message that you'll never find in the future, because some long ago librarian put the directions to where the capsule is hidden on a floppy disk, or put it up on the net where it would be safely preserved for future generations. I know terms like floppy disk and net must sound quaint to your future ears. Here are some other terms I'll bet you haven't heard in a couple decades that I'm sure will make you smile. Google, BlackBerry, Twitter. Back now, people like to give goofy names to things we thought were important. I'm confident that these gizmos have all faded from your modern scene, like the hula hoop and Mitt Romney have faded from ours. So people of the future, I hope you found this brief message without having to use a detecto ray on the library lawn. If you knew where to go and you found our little time capsule, someone must have stuck a clipping of my story on some 100-year-old refrigerator door and saved it for posterity, which is about as good as it gets for most now dead newspaper men and women. And if you're reading this note and you're not scrambling around looking for some kind of device on which to read it, and you can still read English as well as Esperanto, and the word newspaper doesn't make you grin, I'll say this about you: you're a whole lot smarter than people of the past ever gave you credit for being. Goodbye. Gis revido. Thank you, Jeremiah Horrigan from Hudson Valley, New York. Now, hop that Jefferson airplane with me and be a volunteer of America as we drop into Houston, Texas. Now, you know that a passionate justice theme has been and is our homelessness. Our friend Robin Sneed of Seattle, as you well know, reports to us regularly about homelessness, as has Carl Eisenbach of Eugene, Oregon. In fact, I have told you of some bold initiatives in L.A., Madison, Wisconsin, elsewhere that have helped. Here's a HuffPo piece from Robbie Couch that offers us even some more hope. Houston nearly halves homeless population in 4 years. Robbie tells us any city struggling to house its residents should look no further than Houston for a few pointers. The number of homeless people residing in shelters or in public spaces in the Houston area has dropped 46%. 46% in the past 4 years, according to a new report released last week. It's incredible, says Marilyn Brown, president and CEO of the Coalition for the Homeless. When we see the result, that the number of homeless has been cut in half? We see we've gone from managing homelessness to ending it. The good news came just a week after Mayor Annise Parker announced the city had ended chronic veteran homelessness. Over the past 3 years, Houston partnered with a number of local groups to house 3,650 vets. 3,650. According to a press release provided to HuffPo, too often, those answering the call of service find themselves struggling long after leaving the military. Mayor Parker says, Houston is there for our heroes, and just like on the battlefield, we will leave no one behind. Now, the coalition credits its success in part to the Way Home, an action plan led by the Houston-Harris County Continuum of Care, or the COC. The COC has aimed to create permanent housing units and implement a coordinated intake assessment and triage system for those in need, among other strategies. As a whole, our nation has made significant dents in homelessness, particularly amongst our veterans. Chronic homelessness has declined by 10% over the past 5 years. I'm going to say that again. Chronic homelessness has declined by 10% over the past 5 years, and veteran homelessness has dropped by 1/3 in that time. What can you do if you're in or near Houston? What can you do if you live in or anywhere near Houston? Support the Coalition for the Homeless in the Houston area. Visit this web address, www.homelesshouston.org, www.homelesshouston.org, and be a volunteer of America. Now, here's a piece that frankly should both alarm and cheer you, and make you cheer for its writer, Della Curry. Della told this to the Washington Post: my school district fired me after I gave a free meal to a student who couldn't pay. We should provide taxpayer-funded free lunches to all kids. Now, Della Curry is a former lunch lady, entrepreneur, wife, and mother of 2. Della Curry was cashiered from her job as a kitchen manager at a Colorado elementary school. Why? For giving free lunches to hungry students. While Ms. Curry acknowledges that she did break the school district's policy, she says she'd do it again. She says that during my year as an elementary school kitchen manager, kids came through my lunch line without money, and for all kinds of reasons. Some of them lost the check their parents had given them. Some had divorced parents who weren't communicating with one another. Others had single parents who just got busy and forgot to give them money. My school district mandates that after 3 incidents, kitchen supervisors take away that child's hot lunch and replace it with a slice of cheese on a bun. I refused to do that, and I was fired. My school district is not unique. Across the country, schools are using cheese sandwiches to punish children, to balance cafeteria budgets. Not only is a cheese sandwich meal unhealthy, it's humiliating. Children are teased by classmates who perceive them as poor. Others cry as they watch their hamburger and fries swapped for a slice of cheese. I've seen first graders choose to go hungry rather than suffer that shame. Like many of the kids who came through my line without money, one first grader wasn't in the free or reduced price lunch program, a federal policy that makes school meals accessible to low-income families. Counselors and teachers had told me that her home life was not stable, but every day she came through my lunch line with a big smile. When her account went negative, I put a stamp on her hand per district policy and lovingly reminded her she needed to bring in money the next day. She still didn't have the $2.80 for lunch, and on the third day she hit the debt limit, $8.40. I contacted her teacher, who told me she would look into it, but I found the girl sitting at her table with no food the next day. She said her guardians didn't have the money, but she didn't want to eat a cheese sandwich. I looked her straight in the eye and promised that I would always feed her a full lunch. The girl's problem wasn't resolved before I was terminated, and I worry about her. Our society should not allow children to go hungry because of their parents' debts. There is a simple solution to ensuring that every kid receives a hot, filling, nutritious meal every single school day. Provide taxpayer-funded free lunches for all of them. We already do this for millions of school children. 19 million students are enrolled in the federal free lunch program because of low family incomes. Through the community eligibility provision, the federal government splits meal costs with school districts to provide free lunches to almost 6.5 million kids attending high-poverty schools, and more than 13 million eat free breakfasts at school, too. The infrastructure already exists to establish a universal free lunch program. The U.S. Department of Agriculture currently reimburses schools $2.98 for every lunch they provide under the free lunch program, instead of the Byzantine system of income qualifications, eligibility forms, and meal-by-meal reimbursements that inflate the cost of operating the National School Lunch Program. Simplify it and redistribute the program's $11.6 billion budget to provide free meals to all 31 million public school kids who eat school lunches. Any extra money it would cost to do this is well worth it. Providing a quality education to all kids is one of our national values. But we cannot effectively educate kids who are not properly fed. So many studies have shown the negative effects of hunger on the learning process. Poor nutrition is linked to weaker cognitive ability, impaired school engagement, hyperactivity. More and more districts are recognizing this. At the very least, we know that the cheese sandwich system cannot stand. It's humiliating, unhealthy, unnecessary. And it feeds a kid just 162 calories, the amount in a slice of cheese and a hamburger bun and a small carton of milk. It cannot be satisfied by a meal with little fiber and vitamins. And the hot lunches that the kids don't get, they're thrown out. That's right, thrown out. Now, from our friend, Boston writer Ted Freer. Ted calls this Walmart USA. When the history of the last 100 years is written, one of its darkest chapters will be devoted to the devastation wrought by the deindustrialization of America. In just 8 years, from 2002 to 2010, more than 43,000 factories were closed, and 8 million jobs lost, according to the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. Every economic era has had its heroes, those inventors, entrepreneurs, and visionaries whose contributions we call progress. But economic history has also had its villains, whether it's the robber barons of the Gilded Age or the malefactors of great wealth of Teddy Roosevelt's progressive era, or FDR's money changers in the temple of civilization from the Great Depression. And now in our own times, Mr. Sam Walton, legendary founder of Walmart. Some experts contend Walmart's everyday low prices constitute a clash between the interests of American workers and American consumers. If people were only consumers, buying things at lower prices would only be good. But people also are workers who need to earn a decent standard of living. The dynamics that create lower prices at Walmart are also undercutting the ability of many, many workers to earn decent wages and benefits and have a stable life. Buy low, sell cheap, high volume, fast returns. That's been the winning formula Walmart's used for more than 50 years to lure shoppers to its stores like hooky-playing schoolboys headed for Pleasure Island who are delighted by all the stuff they can buy until they're transformed into terror-stricken donkeys, shipped off to the salt mines. Walmart's ability to suck the life out of local main streets and mom-and-pop variety stores is well known, but the chain's devastating effects on American manufacturing is only now coming into focus as America struggles to recover from the economic crisis 7 years ago. Before the rise of big box retailers, manufacturers decided what got produced and what retailers would offer, says Hedrick Smith, author of the excellent account of the decline of the middle class who stole the American dream. Walmart changed all that, he says. Walmart not only figured out a way to sell low-cost crap better than anyone else, Walmart also reversed the relationship between retailer and manufacturer. Now the now the retailer is the center, the power, and the manufacturer becomes the serf, the vassal, the underling who has to do the bidding of the retailer. That's a new thing. It's a power shift that has devastating impact on some of the best middle-class jobs in U.S. industry, noting that, says Mr. Smith, the author, noting that millions of Americans have seen their wages stagnate or fall as the U.S. economy shifts from making things to peddling them. Walmart's power and influences are awesome. By exploiting information technology in the global economy, Walmart has dramatically changed the balance of power in the world of business. Forging a relationship with Walmart can be a double-edged sword for small vendors and big companies alike, because the pressure to cut costs 5 to 10% per year, no excuses, can cut a supplier to ribbons. That's what happened to Rubbermaid of Worcester, Ohio, just one of many now defunct name brand companies who've been run out of business by Walmart's ruthless price-cutting business model. In '94, Rubbermaid was named America's Most Admired Company by Fortune, employing about 1,000 people. 10 years later, thanks to price-cutting demands imposed by Walmart, Rubbermaid's most important customer, the company's factory was an empty carcass as scavengers from plastic companies in South America, Europe, and of course China picked its bones and brought Rubbermaid to its knees and bought Rubbermaid's manufacturing equipment at Walmart-like discounts. The same was true of Thompson Consumer Electronics, an RCA television manufacturing plant that was a source of great jobs at good wages for about 1,000 residents of the medium-sized town Circleville, Ohio. But in late '03, Thompson Consumer Electronics was forced to shut down after losing a sizable portion of its production orders to companies in China, paying 50 cents on the hour, where Walmart imports anywhere from 15 to 30 billion in goods every year. If you want these low prices, then you go buy your products from Walmart, says a longtime Thompson worker who had once made 15 to 16 an hour. But what does that actually do for the country, our country? It's putting people out of work, and it's lowering our standard of living. That's the bottom line. Smith relates a meeting in which a Walmart vice president bluntly tells a group of 200 suppliers that if they want Walmart's business, they have to shift at least 25% of their business to China. If you want to do business with us, and this is a quote, if you want to do business with us, if you want to stay in business, then you're going to have to do it our way. It's all about driving down the cost of goods. And that's what Walmart's done. Sam Walton opened his first store on the 2nd of July, '62. By '69, he had 32 stores in 4 states. Throughout the '70s, Walmart doubled its sales every 2 years, so that by '80, there were 276 stores generating $1 billion in sales every year. You'd think a company that offers tens of millions of customers the opportunity to buy things dirt cheap would be immune from bad press, but when the stream of American factory jobs destined for markets overseas turned into a flood, Walmart was forced to launch a feel-good Buy American PR campaign that won praise from politicians and newspapers around the country and featured Made in the USA signs over clothing racks. It didn't seem to matter that the clothing was imported from Bangladesh, or that consumers didn't stop to consider that Walmart was driving American manufacturing out of business with its predatory pricing. Sad to say, over the past half century that Walmart has been in business, America has become a lot like Walmart. It's gotten cheap. Prices were lower than wages. There were fewer union factory jobs and more part-time jobs as store greeters. The small towns where Mr. Sam had seen his opportunity were getting poorer, which means that consumers were dependent more and more on everyday low prices and made every last purchase at Walmart and maybe had to work there too. But the hollowing out of the heartland that writers like Smith and Packer tell us about were good for Walmart's bottom line, you see, and in parts of the country that were getting richer, whether on the coasts or in some big cities, many consumers regarded Walmart and its vast aisles full of crappy, if not dangerous, Chinese-made goods with horror. They looked at them with horror, and instead they purchased their shoes and meat in expensive boutiques, while stores like Macy's, the bastions of a former middle-class economy, faded out, and America began to look once more like the country Mr. Sam had grown up in. Capitalism, you see, works best when it operates in what economists call an environment of perfect competition, where entry into the market is easy, and those able to stay find ways to offer the best products at the lowest price. Yet today, with 3,800 stores, 1.2 million employees, 140 million customers, and 280 billion in annual sales, Walmart is like some great hurricane churning out in the Atlantic that is able to make its own economic weather. By one Walmart-friendly estimate, the company's tight-fisted, low-price strategy cut inflation by 3% during the 11 years between 95 and 06, or by 0.15% per year. Impressive for one company. As the example of Walmart shows, what capitalism has never been very good at, preventing without democratic governmental intervention, are those accumulations of enormous wealth and power that allow a relative few to rewrite the rules of the game in their favor and reshape whole societies as they see fit. Instead of working together to build a middle-class economy and society as was done by business, labor, and government in the years after the Second War, those with access to capital or the latest technologies or to the global marketplace have been cannibalizing our economy, and mostly for their own benefit, and giving workers access to cheap credit as a stopgap substitute for a regular paycheck in order to keep consumption up along with stock prices is not a sustainable economic strategy, since economies are like ecosystems that subsist where there is an equilibrium between buyers and sellers, makers and takers. It is that healthy balance between producers and consumers which is far more important as a driver of economic prosperity than our untamed price mechanisms or profit motives of laissez-faire capitalism. When you tally up their costs to working-class families, they stick out offensively like some raised middle finger on Adam Smith's celebrated invisible hand. Thank you so much, Ted Freer of Boston, for that wonderful, illuminating piece. Now, you know that our friend Anne Bourne is a New York-based writer who has been writing stories and poetry since she was a kid. She blogs on the Backpack Press and Tumbleweed Pilgrim, and her writing focuses on family and life in a big city after growing up in a small one. She's the author of A Marshmallow on the Bus and Prayer Beads on the Train. She's a photographer who specializes in photos of churches, cemeteries, and the Way of St. James in Spain. Most of her writing is done on the bus. Go to www.about.me/Anne Bourne, ANNEBORN. Now you can follow Anne on Wattpad, WATTPAD, Instagram, and at Twitter at Nilesite, at NILESITE. Now, here is Anne's latest, Lay Lady Lay, Sex and the Pill in the 70s. And you'll see why in just a few moments that I've shared this with you today when I pair it with what we'll wrap with later on. The take-home message was clear in the 70s. If you wanted to compete, to stay in school, pursue a career, or get a great education, you would have to meet men at the table on equal footing. Suddenly, the best way to do that was to go on the pill. You could own your sex life in an honest, forthright way and stay in school. It was the best of both worlds. It was a revelation many of today's feminists don't understand. There was a pivotal moment in my growing up when the music changed. On some critical day, my friends and I went from listening to the Beatles wanting to just hold my hand to Bob Dylan singing "Lay Across My Big Brass Bed." The Rolling Stones suddenly wanted to spend the night together, while the Beach Boys just thought, wouldn't it be nice if we were older? It was an era of insistent rock and roll, and all I wanted was to be older. I didn't know what any of that meant when I was 13 in Catholic school, but I sure found out fast when I was 17 in '69 and away from my family at the University of Michigan. To be fair, Michigan was not an unusual hotbed of sex, drugs, or rock and roll. It was just a college filled with 37,000 kids like me, away from home for the first time. We knew very little about sex, less about drugs, but everything about rock and roll. To call it a learning experience, to go away to college in those years is an understatement, and it would come together somewhere about the time I started college with the introduction of the pill. Oral contraception changed everything for women in the 70s. So many things were on the cusp of change as I entered college in those years. Post-Hillary Clinton white glove girl years, I lived in a dorm where we were asked to take a vote in the beginning of the semester to see if men might be able to be in the dorm during visiting hours. I thought that was really bizarre at the time. Why wouldn't you want to have your friends over? In my total naivete, I voted in the affirmative. Let's let guys come over. Then the question was, when are visiting hours going to be? In the end, we moved beyond the more demure men in the lobby only days to opening the doors and even thought it was just girls living there. Young men could visit, at which point the girl across the hall moved her boyfriend in and we all went back to what we were doing. He was great and it was like family. He looked after us and she just kept going to school. The girl who lived at the end of the hall was the most remarkable to me. She was insanely tall, had legs and hair like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, a wardrobe like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, and a job like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. She financed her education by turning tricks. She would get calls at all hours and come back and tell us about going 6 or 8 times. She always had cash. She always looked fabulous, and yes, she was on the pill. First woman I knew who had a prescription for oral contraceptives. That was it. In that moment, I understood that the key component to her life was a very feminine-looking compact with the tiny pills that kept her from getting pregnant, which ultimately kept her working, which in turn kept her in school. That was powerful stuff to a kid who barely knew what exactly this girl was doing at night. At this moment in 1970, the Supreme Court had not yet ruled that unmarried persons had any constitutional right to privacy and, by extension, contraception. Remarkable to think now that my dorm mate really was every bit as cutting edge as I thought she was then. There was something about the pill in those very early years, though. It had a mystique. Initially, it was something other than people did. It was something, not me, but that other people did. It was right and so very wrong at the same time. You didn't want your mother to find out you were a fast girl or that you might be easy. And on the other hand, you certainly didn't want an unplanned pregnancy to cut short your dream of finishing school, especially since women finished school against so many odds in those days that when I talk about it now, it might as well have been the covered wagon era. Another of my freshman floor mates wanted to get a graduate degree at the School of Architecture. She was great in math, loved to draw, dreamed of being an architect, but when she came back from the interview, she wanted to pack up and go home because some moth-eaten old white guy sat her down and let her know she wasn't getting in because, after all, that kind of professional schooling would be wasted on a woman who would just turn around and get married or pregnant and waste an opportunity that would be better filled by a young man. If he gave her a seat, he would in effect be turning away a man who could provide for his family. To the younger, more judgmental feminist crowd, I ask you to spend a few minutes remembering that that was a reality for many of us not that long ago. And those very personal events shaped the opening years of late 60s, 70s feminism. The take-home message was clear. If you wanted to compete, to stay in school, pursue a career, get an education, a great education, you would have to meet men at the table on equal footing, and suddenly the best way to do that was to go on the pill. You could own your sex life in an honest, forthright way and stay in school. It was the best of both worlds, but not everyone took to the pill right away. There were problems with balancing the prescription because the early pills were such an unnecessarily high dosage. There were side effects, and it was openly condemned by the Catholic Church, which kept advocating for the old-fashioned rhythm method, something my friends and I could not begin to understand, let alone make work to our advantage. Still, somehow, we all came on board, and the monthly reward was finally we knew exactly when to expect our period. So those days we could take a couple of aspirin and just lie down and take a nap. It was order where all we knew before was disorder. It was a play that suddenly we could direct instead of just act. Looking back, I'm stunned by the suddenness of the sexual revolution of the 70s. We went from listening to the Beach Boys and snickering about what other girls did in cars, at the drive-in movies, to taking the pill, owning our own sexuality, standing up for equal opportunity, and beyond all that, we insisted on staying in school. We were shocked that Bob Dylan could sing Lay, Lady, Lay, and yet we delighted in it. We found that the view on the other side of that key pivotal moment in rock and roll was clear and fresh and exhilarating. We reveled in our freedom, and taking the pill was a bold, decisive way to express it. I confess, I have no idea what sex workers did to prevent pregnancy before my dorm friend started taking the pill. I'm certain she never knew what an impact her choices had on me in 1970. I do know that an enormous layer of fear and secrecy about sex was lifted from us when the pill was introduced and made legal, available, even affordable. We all suddenly stopped giggling, and with the Jefferson Airplane or Rolling Stones playing in the background, we started saying honestly, yeah, let's spend the night together. As always, thank you, Anne Bourne. Now, In a related piece about contemporary gender issues at university, writer Jenny Shulkin, a grad of my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, Why Women Take a Back Seat in the College Greek System. There has been a lot of media attention in the past calendar year on the sexist initiation rituals, rape, and sexual assault incidents within college Greek life. As a result, the question's been asked, why do women continually and willingly take part in a system which they abide by the opposite sex's rules? The answer may be simple. There's not a good alternative. At many of the 800-plus American and Canadian colleges that support Greek life, fraternities control the social scene with very little competition. Non-Greek student groups attract far fewer participants, are more sparsely funded, and provide less of an all-encompassing way of life, lacking a house, a cook, constant events. They exist as small planets revolving around a powerful sun. The compulsion to join Greek life is strong. Without it, many students feel they'd be socially irrelevant, excluded from much of the college experience. This widespread belief was part of what motivated me to rush a sorority. However, I soon realized that as a woman, I was not an equal player in the game, a power dynamic driven by inequality. Even though I joined a well-respected sorority and thoroughly enjoyed my Greek life experience, the community with which I was affiliated was incomparable to that of a fraternity. If I walked past my sorority house in the afternoon, it would be empty. Sorority houses are entirely dissimilar to frat houses where members congregate outside on leather sofas and blast music between classes. Outside of weekly chapter meetings and the occasional mandatory philanthropic event, the sisterhood rarely comes together. In order to gain social benefits beyond this, a Greek woman must strive to play a role in the fraternity community. She must receive invitations to exclusive frat events, be asked to date parties, and be viewed as sexually desirable in the eyes of a fraternity. For many, joining a sorority is less about sisterhood for the sake of sisterhood and more about sisterhood for the sake of being within the brotherhood. What this means is that men are really in control of the Greek social scene, and at Greek-dominated college, at those colleges, the entire social scene. In the sexual economy of Greek life, men demand sex and women supply it. In contrast, women demand social status and benefits while men supply them. Fraternity men have the upper hand in this economy for the following reasons. There is an intentional imbalance. Fraternity houses host parties and possess alcohols, while sorority houses nationwide are forbidden and must depend on men for those resources. Frat brothers, as the hosts, control who is granted entry into their parties. As a result, frat brothers restrict a party's population mainly to themselves and to women they consider popular or attractive. By intentionally creating a male-female imbalance, fraternity men present themselves with greater options while women are forced to compete for limited male attention. It is one-sided. Interestingly, frats do not seem to feel the same need to compete with other frats that sororities do with other sororities. UC at Santa Barbara's Sean Hernandez research found that average BMI, body mass index, is significantly lower for top USC sororities than bottom ones, whereas there's almost no variation between top and bottom frats. In Greek life, anorexic women seem to be just as common as men with beer bellies. It's no coincidence that the sororities at the top of social hierarchy, the ones that have the greatest access to frat company, embody society's thin ideals. The finding that Greek men feel less pressure to sculpt their bodies in order to be popular among the opposite sex makes sense, considering that frat men hold the power. Competition within sororities is just as rampant as it is between sororities. Unlike the brotherhood of fraternities, uncharacterized by inclusion and loyalty, sorority women report exclusive cliques and incidents of backstabbing by fellow sisters. Such an atmosphere fosters female insecurity and pressures many Greek women to engage in sexual activity. Unsurprisingly, Hernandez's research found that at USC, a sorority social status has a positive correlation with its members' sexual encounters. Additionally, some colleges have destination formals in which frat men and their dates take a weekend trip. A woman is expected to be a good date, one who consents to sexual activity in the hotel room. After all, she had the privilege of being taken to the event, and the frat brother could have easily asked someone else. Sex within Greek life has become meaningless to so many, a drunken formality performed in exchange for the privilege of feeling included. Future social invitations are not a given. If she denies him, a frat brother needs not look for a replacement. Solutions? The current reality is that Greek women must comply with a system in which their ability to drink alcohol, attend parties, and gain social status is dependent on frat acceptance. One possible remedy is to enhance sorority community. There's no reason why brothers flock to the fraternity house in between classes for lunch while sorority girls eat alone or in small cliques at campus cafes. There's no reason why a fraternity house on Wednesday night buzzes with beer pong while a sorority house is empty as it is on Monday morning. Sororities should be permitted to register parties and have alcohol in chapter houses so that they need not depend on frat approval for these activities and resources. Even more importantly, priorities need to be shifted from competing for male attention to actual sisterhood, and not just the sisterhood advertised during rush week. Another possibility is to dilute Greek influence on college campuses through enhancing non-Greek student groups. If other organizations could obtain university-sponsored residences, sizable funds or activities, and social reputations comparable with the Greek community, the compulsion to join Greek life in order to have an active social life might not be as strong. Frats should not control who attends social events. Competition should not be a way of life for college women. Sex should not be an obligation. The sooner the problems of an archaic frat sorority dynamic are corrected, the sooner the overall college experience can be far richer. Now, I very much appreciate this, Jenny Shulkin, and it pairs so interestingly, don't you think, with Ann Bourne's recollections about dorm life and the pill at Michigan in 1970. And I want all of you to think on your stories now, your essays, your poems. Let Passionate Justice give them added, broadened life. Send them to me, JonathanWolfman01@gmail.com, at jwolf41387 and follow this program on Twitter at jwolf41387, because you have so much more. You have passionate justice all the while. You keep trying to live as if justice matters, as if what you and your kids do matter. Be creative, courageous. Take your place on that great Mandela next to Bud Clayman, Marina Motti, Jeremiah Horrigan, Robbie Couch, Della Curry, Ted Freer, Ann Bourne, Jenny Shulkin, and me, because this is our brief moment of time. Phil Oakes said, I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here, and he was right. Repair this crazy place. You can. I promise. When you act on justice's behalf, it does pay back, and most definitely will make you happy. I want you to watch for and listen to our 85th Passionate Justice program on Our Salon Radio, and follow the show on Twitter at jwolf41387, because there and here at Our Salon Radio and everywhere, it's passionate justice.